this is part 2 of our panel today. So again, we have 4 outstanding names in the local Indonesian games industry. I'll move on with the next question, which is, well, some Indonesian-developed games have been successful both local and international. There are names that we locally really love, such as Red Out, Coffee Talk, Hotel Arc, or maybe locally we have Tahu Bulat, Happy Glass, or Billionaire in the mobile space. So is there a common recipe for success among them? Maybe we can start with Joe from MPL. You think there's a common recipe for success for these kind of games?
Look, I think it's hard to tell, to be honest. I think generally, one of the things that we keep saying at MPL is that games are the one form of media that don't really have a language. So if I think if you've kind of hit on something where you've hit on just a very high quality kind of game where there's some sort of behavior, something in that game that's very highly addictive, then it'll do well regardless. I think for me, it's I don't think Indonesia has any shortage of games, or quality games rather. I think they're all a lot of them frankly are very high quality. I think it's more of an issue of distribution. So I don't know, I can't comment specifically to those games, but for me, generally what I see is that the games that do really well have very strong distribution and very strong marketing. And it's a part of the games industry that not a lot of game companies talk about because it's not related to the game per se. But I think that's very important in terms of getting scale.
Right. So distribution and marketing is key according to you, and it's more about finding the right audience also. Right. I think this is one of the things that Kris and UEFA are specializing on. So I think I'll start by asking UEFA, what do you think about finding that kind of market? Is that a recipe for success for local developers?
Yes, I just, thank you, Cipto. I just want to add what Joe just said. I think part of the success as well, it's also combined by the contents. I mean, I think contents also play a major role in the success of the particular games. I think the contents as well have to fit into the targeted market. So content with the right marketing fit, I think it will definitely a recipe for success here. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Kris? Is your experience in line with what they said?
Yeah. So I think the definition of success can vary from developer to developer, or even to amongst publisher. I totally agree what Joe said. Basically, distribution and marketing plays a huge role in determining if a game is successful or not, right? When you look at the top games in Indonesia, they have a huge marketing budget that basically can get a lot of visibility and attract a lot of players. But when we're looking at local game developers in Indonesia, because mostly they don't have a lot of budget, and so they're kind of they have a great idea, probably they can execute their game very well, but they don't have that marketing power, right? They don't have that marketing push. So I think from our own experience, we always look at how can a game hook, so before that we try to determine who is the target market for this game. It's is the developer targeting a specific market or a specific niche, for example, and they need to understand what makes this game appealing to that target market. And that's from that you can basically try to determine the hooks, what makes it interesting. Is it a narrative game? Is it the narrative interesting? Is it the visual? Is it the backstory, the lore, or is it the mechanics? Because different target markets have different hooks, right? They have different interests. So one probably let's say from Coffee Talk, right? The game that we publish and we develop. That is I would say a very strange game because it's not replayable. You play it once, you know the story, and that's it. The game is relatively short. You can finish the game under than 4 hours. But Coffee Talk have now sold more than 100,000 copies worldwide, and half of that is on console and the other half is on PC. And for us, I think one of the reasons for success is that we truly make a game that's genuine, that's relatable to our own, based on our developers' experience and the message that we want to tell. But it also resonates to our target audience, and we basically kind of identified the parts that are interesting to those people, and we just focus on that. we focus on the music because we understand that, like the visual novel, like players, they really like music, like the music on the game. They are interested in the characters. They focus on the dialogues. So we really focus on that. And and I think for other developers out there, they really need to understand, like what kind of game am I making, and who are the people that's willing to pay, let's say, more than $20 for this game, right? And then really focus on that and really deliver an awesome experience, and kind of like get into their expectation, get deliver all the interesting hooks, basically. So I think that's what they need to do first. So because like even though you don't have any marketing, if you really make a game that's interesting, and you'll get word of mouth marketing, right? So because people will start recommending it to their friends, and we see a lot of that driving game successes. Like for example, like a new game like Among Us, right? Among Us was released 2 years ago, and then they're a huge hit today because the game suddenly got discovered by a streamer, and then it is just like a word of mouth marketing. So as long as that product is it's really good, word of mouth marketing will it will happen. It will take its course.
The point here is that good, because good is subjective, depending on who your target market is or who this game is designed for. The point, I guess, is for developers to properly understand who is it they're making their games for, because I think that's something that's lacking in the majority, I think, of developers. Like I think, or in the part one, I think Kris also mentioned that Indonesia started off the game development industry in a very grassroots way, instead of there's a big company that can have a lot of a big team and then they can learn from the best. It's more about like sometimes people who start a game industry in Indonesia tend to have to rediscover the wheel, which is that's why they focus more on the development part instead of understanding that market. And also, yeah. So with this in mind, how can others, such as, for example, investors, publishers, or foreign players, take part in this growing industry? And what's the channel for them to meet good teams or good partners? So I think for this, I'll start with Kris. What do you think, Kris?
Yeah. So for how can publishers or like investors be part of Indonesia's game industry future? I think it's just first like come to Indonesia and meet us. We like before COVID, we have like annual events like Game Prime and then IGDX, right? So where international investors or publishers can come and meet the developers, and then they could play test and try all the games. But because of COVID, we couldn't do that anymore. Hopefully in the future we can do that again. But right now, like I think it's a good opportunity for Indonesian developers as well, because a lot of the events are now online, right? And now like we can join an event in Germany without having to flying there, without flying there, or like in Seattle without flying there. So I think a lot of Indonesian developers are kind of like like leveraging that and joining events and basically meeting publishers there. But I think if international publishers could kind of like approach or like take a more proactive action, they could reach out our game association like AGI, and then also reach out to the communities and event organizers in the region, like like Gamescom Asia, and basically we can start meeting publishers and developers or like partners there.
All right, awesome, Kris. Okay, what do you think about this, Gueva? How do you think other people can join in this growing market, or be connected to local developers?
Yes, thank you, Cipto. And I think the publishers and investors, I think they can have a chance to meet all the local developers through the online events that currently is happening right now. There's few events that is happening right now, and also events that is upcoming event by Gamescom Asia as well. I think they can reach out to Indonesian Game Association and comment paragraph, Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy. I think they will help those investors and publishers to get connected to local developers. I think it's I think right now Indonesia have very a huge market and huge potentials. And we Indonesian developers definitely will be happy to meet with investors and publishers to discuss more about the current growing markets. Definitely is a good thing. So yeah, online events, definitely a B2B networking events that is happening right now. Yeah, I think that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that applies also for developers, so not just publishers or investors, but also developers who think, like in the previous question, who have determined that the Indonesian market seems to fit the kind of game that they're making, or maybe they don't know if it fits or not, or they want to find out. Maybe it's a good thing to contact Indonesian companies who can give them that kind of answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think lastly, I would like to ask Pak Neil about how companies from foreign companies can take part in the future of Indonesian game industry. I think lately, especially lately, the government has been supporting us quite a lot through different events and different programs. Do you think these programs can be a gateway for international players to collaborate with local companies?
Thank you, Cipto. Since a couple years ago, the government from Barecraft and now Parecraft already tried to bring Indonesian game dev into international exposition, as well as B2B meetings, such as in Gamescom Cologne, for example. That's one of the way to basically, we believe, to establish trust between Indonesian stakeholders, game stakeholders, and foreign players such as investors as well as publishers. And I think it works because now when we have such event, a lot of foreign businesses are willing to meet with our developers. I think that's one of the key that we believe are keys for establishing a trust. And the other thing is that the government itself, like us, for example, we had a program, for example, an incentive program for local game developers, that also creating supporting Indonesian game developer to create good games. On of course, the risk is we take the risk for investing it as a grant. So it's not a loan, it's basically grant such as bantuan insentif pemerintah, ya, government incentive support. So those I think the kind of commitment that we are willing to put forth in order for the industry, the Indonesian game industry to grow. And to attract more international publishers as well as investors to invest and to develop Indonesian game.
All right, thank you so much, Pak Neil. So I think part 2 is as exciting as the first part. There's also a lot of insights that we gained from this just two questions. We'll go right to Q&A after this. If you have any questions, please go ahead. We'll be right here to answer your questions.